It was a tumultuous year in Thunder Bay as both the police chief and the mayor were hit with criminal charges. And the entire police force was put under the microscope for its handling of cases involving Indigenous people. Stay with us as over the next hour, we recap the top stories of 2017. I'm Leanne Evans, and thank you for watching TBT News Year-in-Review. The start of January saw a tragic collision on Highway 61 in which a 45-year-old woman from the Fort William First Nation was killed.
Call 911 right now.
OPP Staff Sergeant Ken Manty describes what happened.
At about 10:40 this morning, we had two southbound SUVs, southbound on 61, approaching the Kaministiquia River Bridge. There was a northbound gray car, northbound on 61 on the bridge. The first SUV southbound and the gray car came into collision, and then the car was then struck again by the second SUV. There was one deceased in the gray car and a number of injuries.
Local MP Patty Hajdu got a new cabinet post in January, moving from status of women to become the new Labor Minister.
I, Patricia A. Hajdu, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts proposed in me as Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labor.
Meanwhile, the Thunder Bay Police Service officially welcomed its first ever female deputy chief. 24-year police veteran Sylvie Hoth has extensive experience in criminal investigations and community services. She said she hopes to also serve as an inspiration for young women and girls who aspire to a career in law enforcement.
I think it's important to talk to young girls in schools, looking at the current programs that we have through our school resource officers, through our Aboriginal liaison officers, and ensuring that we basically center out young girls and young women and really giving them the opportunity to ask questions, learn what the job is all about, and really give them a kind of a fresh look as opposed to, seeing it through the eyes of the television, for example.
I'm thrilled. I think Sylvie, she's been at it about 3 weeks now, and she hit the ground running. She's doing a wonderful job. She's a very, very intelligent woman.
The District Health Unit unveiled its first food safety scorecard in January. The grade-based system aims to make health inspection results as visible as possible to the public.
Now, all of the city's food service establishments, from restaurants to convenience stores, will receive an A to D scorecard and be required to display those cards at or near an entrance clearly visible to the public. The system is a demerit-based one, meaning each restaurant starts with a 100-point score, and food safety or cleanliness infractions will lower that score.
If a place is so bad that it's actually dangerous, then we'll close it. Okay, so if it has a sign up, if they're open, then you can eat there for sure. What we're trying to do is let people know who's being very diligent with compliance with food safety regulations and who's not.
Also in January, the Trudeau Liberals made good on a promise to reopen the Veteran Affairs Office here in the city.
Roy Lamore served in the Second World War and was on the front line in the battle to reopen the 8 smaller offices across the country after they were closed by the Harper government in 2014.
You wouldn't believe how good we feel because it's something we've been looking for. We read the papers, we hear the news, and all, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Now it is done. We are getting it. And this is the part that I'll bet you I'll get phone calls today from veterans that just saying thank you.
In late January, the city was shocked by an incident on Cameron Street in which a 34-year-old Barbara Kentner was hit in the abdomen by a trailer hitch. 18-year-old Braden Bushby was later taken into custody and charged with aggravated assault. Native leaders called for the incident to be treated as a hate crime. The month of February began with Mayor Keith Hobbs filing a notice of libel and slander against Sandy Zaitsev, claiming the lawyer posted a controversial video online in retaliation against the mayor. The video has been viewed more than 30,000 times. It shows Zaitsev proposing to his fiancée in the presence of the mayor, his wife, and several other people in Zaitsev's basement. It was apparently produced about a month before Zaitsev was arrested for sexual assault and other charges. According to the libel notice, Zaitsev posted the video because Hobbs indicated he would be contacting police about the sex allegations. Hobbs claims Zaitsev warned him twice that he would post the video in order to damage the mayor's reputation. Catholic elementary teachers in Thunder Bay carried through on their threat to begin rotating strikes early in February. Around 70 teachers from grade 7 and 8 schools walked off the job to protest in front of the Catholic School Board office.
Perhaps that should send a message to everybody within this building, much less to the entire public. 15, 20 below, it's the dead heart of winter here, and these people are out here picketing. So for the board to go into the media and say they're leaders in the province and that they've provided us with everything we've asked for in bargaining, well, look around you. I don't think that's so.
The board responded by locking out those same 70 teachers the next day. The two sides eventually reached a deal through a mediator the following week. Also in February, City Council voted to close the Chippewa Wildlife Exhibit despite some last-ditch efforts to save it.
Supporters of the wildlife exhibit had argued closure would mean euthanizing many of the animals at the zoo, some of whom are too old to be successfully transferred to other zoos. But city staff say that's not the case.
I talked to our animal transporter, and he assured me that he could get rid of, find them homes in other zoos across the country.
Council voted down the motion, and the closure of Chippewa Zoo stays in the 2017 budget.
Meanwhile, Council was also feeling the heat for the proposed new garbage bag limit, which would reduce the amount of trash which residents can put on the curb. The union president said the changes from 3 to 2 bags or bins would allow the city to eliminate 2 waste collection positions.
Well, we've had a lot of issues with the budget so far. We've lost, so far, 10 positions within QP Local 87. Tonight, there's another 3 or 4 up on the chopping block, which we're not happy with. They're cutting city services, which is cutting our members that we're not in agreement with. I've been meeting with city administration to see if we can collaborate to save money for the budget, so that way more job cuts don't need to happen.
And it was an emotional night at Council in late February as several councillors apologized for not attending the inquest into the deaths of 7 First Nation youth.
We made every effort to be part of that inquest, and I don't remember seeing any of you there. Maybe you were there when I couldn't make it, but the inquest involved you as well.
And I'm ashamed of myself for being afraid of not going. And I watched from the sidelines. And I just read the articles and the reports, but I wasn't there.
Michael Gravel revealed in February that he was diagnosed with depression and would be taking a leave of absence from his ministerial duties to deal with the condition.
In a shock announcement Monday afternoon, Michael Gravel revealed he would be temporarily stepping aside from his position as Minister of Northern Development and Mines. The longtime politician, who normally has a smile for everyone, now admits he's been struggling with a feeling of uneasiness he's not been able to shake. In a statement issued today, Gravel said, quote, "My doctor diagnosed me with depression last year. I've been grappling with this disease privately while maintaining to the best of my ability the work that I love to do as minister and MPP. It will take some time, effort, treatment, and understanding to properly address this illness. With your love and support, I know that I will be able to treat this disease and be back to myself."
In March, the long-awaited trial over the James Street swing bridge began. Many hoped the court battle between the City of Thunder Bay and CN Rail would bring some resolution for those who depend on the bridge.
Matthews told the court that a 1906 agreement still holds CN Rail responsible for all repairs. The original contract between Grand Trunk Pacific Railway and the City of Fort William states the railway will maintain the bridge in perpetuity without cost to the city. Matthews also argued that while the bridge will need barriers and other improvements to protect pedestrians from cars, the structure of the James Street swing bridge is sound and substantial repairs are not required.
In the end, the judge ruled in favor of CN and the bridge remains closed to vehicles. Also in March, St. Pat's and St. Ignatius announced two major projects totaling $4 million to create new running tracks and artificial turf for their football and soccer teams.
Super excited about it. Can't wait for next year to start because I play both football and soccer, so it's just super exciting getting to play on that field. Practices will be more fun. Everyone will be looking forward to it.
It's huge for our board. It gives us an opportunity to enhance our physical education programming along with our athletic programming, and it's not just for our high schools, it's going to enhance programming in our feeder schools as well.
Plans moved ahead in March on the potential teardown of Victoriaville Center. Realty Services Manager Joel Deputer estimated the cost to demolish the mall at about $9 million. Repairing the mall's roof and skylights and keeping it open would cost around $14 million over the next 10 years.
It was built in 1979, and as facilities age, the costs increase. So we need to take a good look at the future of Victoriaville and if it's going to be invested in or repurposed in some way, or if it's time for it to be demolished. Council were to decide to demolish, then it would need to be budgeted for. I guess the thing is, it's not something that would occur in the next year or 2 years. It's a major project that would need to be planned for.
City Council ended up voting in favor of moving ahead with an environmental assessment of the potential demolition at a cost of $150,000. The city chose not to provide money to save the street outreach program at the shelter house, which forced the service to shut down at the end of March.
The countdown is on until the suspension of Shelter House's SOS program, a mobile unit which provides assistance to the city's homeless population, takes effect. In 2016, SOS provided nearly 5,000 rides and gave out 22,000 items to assist those living on the streets. As of April 1st, a funding shortfall will cause the shutdown of the program for the summer months.
And at the end of March, Sandy Zaitsev was released on bail. The local attorney was charged in November 2016 for numerous sexual assault charges. He was rearrested in December and spent more than 3 months in custody at the Thunder Bay District Jail. He was released on a $27,000 bond and was not permitted to purchase or consume drugs and alcohol or have any contact with the parties involved in the charges. His case has yet to go to trial.
April saw a major ice storm hit the region. Stay with us as TBT News Year-in-Review continues. Welcome back to TBT News Year-in-Review. The month of April saw a city council provide financial support to the new art gallery project on the waterfront.
The art gallery move to the waterfront has been debated for years, and now it's one step closer to reality. Monday night, council voted to use $5 million in debt to bring Thunder Bay Art Gallery officials closer to their $33 million goal. Many on council said they were supportive of the move, which is dependent on Ottawa and the province also contributing.
Meanwhile, Keith Hobbs announced he would not be seeking a third term as mayor. He made the remark during the debate over the art gallery.
And leave the naysayers behind and don't worry about votes. I know we're politicians and we worry about it. I'm not running again next election, so I really don't care about votes, but I care about moving this city forward.
The stalled hotel project on the waterfront finally resumed construction in April. The $30 million Delta Hotel was first announced in 2012, and it's now expected to open by September of 2018.
Workers are back on the job at the Delta Marriott Hotel on the city's waterfront after a series of delays that have pushed the project's opening back nearly 4 years. At a news conference near the construction site, hotel developer Giselle McDonald and city staff unveiled designs for the hotel's interiors along with a summer 2018 completion date.
I had a vision and a goal, and I think the perseverance of doing this is I sincerely believed in Thunder Bay. I believed in the community, and I sincerely believe that there needs to be a hotel of this caliber here in Thunder Bay.
In late April, the biggest ice storm in recent memory resulted in cancellations and headaches across the city. It caused a complete shutdown of all schools for 2 days, along with dozens of flight cancellations at the airport and power outages around the city.
Hundreds have been left without power throughout the day as a result of the ice storm. Power outages struck grids across the city, the worst outage happening between Westford and Northwood. At its peak, 5,000 people were left without power.
Mainly, the outages are being caused by the ice buildup on trees, and the trees are then leaning into power lines or breaking onto the power lines.
City police were urging everyone to drive slow, or better yet, stay indoors. And local glass repair shops were inundated with broken windshields caused by the thick ice buildup and the efforts to remove it.
Well, over the last 24 hours, we've received numerous phone calls. I'm inclined to say probably even hundreds of phone calls of customers who have, from the ice storm, had windshield problems, broken their windows, broken side glass, broken their rear windows. We're offering temporary solutions, tape-ups, just to get people through until we can actually get the job done. There's a lot of customers in need for sure.
The month of May saw a long-awaited announcement of a new jail for Thunder Bay to replace a pair of aging facilities that have had some problems.
The conditions at the district jail in particular have garnered national attention in recent years. The facility has been the site of a riot in which a guard was taken hostage, an escape, and the death of several inmates. Corrections officer and union leader Sean Bradshaw says the announcement is long overdue.
It's going to take a lot of pressure off the inmate population. They're going to have the ability to have a lot of their rights that they've been pretty much denied based on our staffing levels and the antiquated facilities we're working in.
Construction of a new Roots to Harvest community garden on Lily Street led to a confrontation between neighbors concerned about rats and people in favor of the project.
The neighbors who are most directly impacted, about 90% are opposed to this urban training farm in the middle of a nice residential area.
That's not true. You only took a vote of those against. You never asked who were for there, and there was way more for there than there was against.
They didn't live in the neighborhood.
I live in the neighborhood.
The opponents say they were not informed about the garden project until the final decision was made. Roots to Harvest director Aaron Beagle calls the residents' protest an over-exaggerated opposition and says Smith's accusations could not be further from the truth.
I think the important thing to do is to call out Mr. Smith for who he is. And to put it kindly today, Mr. Smith is working really hard to try to make himself relevant.
The month saw a pair of tragic deaths in the Nebang-McIntyre floodway. 17-year-old Tammy Kiash was found dead in a shallow part of the floodway on May 7th. And 14-year-old Josiah Begg's body was found in the river on May 19th. This was after an extensive search by police and volunteers. First Nation leaders were upset at how city police handled the two cases.
The family's asking for, they want a private investigator to come in and to re-examine the case and to try to find out what really happened, because for the police to say that was simply a drowning is something that the family is not prepared to accept at this time.
On May 22nd, city police responded to a gang-related murder in broad daylight on Mark Street. 7 days later, police announced the victim as 21-year-old Edmund Clovis from the Toronto area.
The mechanism as to the cause of death has to be determined by the coroner, and that is the proper procedure, so we are waiting on that before we make any further determinations.
The incident happened on Monday afternoon just after 4 o'clock. Police responding to a 911 call arrived to discover a seriously injured man outside a residence on the 300 block of the street. The man was rushed to hospital but was pronounced dead. Eyewitnesses who didn't want to appear on camera say the man was laying in a pool of blood and unresponsive.
Police later released a photo of a suspect, 29-year-old Michael Cleghorn from Toronto, but the case remains unsolved. On May 24th, a bombshell hit the city as Police Chief J.P. Levesque was charged with breach of trust and obstructing justice. The OPP alleges he disclosed confidential information about Mayor Keith Hobbs. Levesque went on medical leave just before the charges were announced and was later suspended with pay. The pressure continued to mount on the force as Native leaders convinced the Ontario Civilian Police Commission to investigate the Thunder Bay Police Board. And they also called for outside police agencies to look into the deaths of Tammy Kiash and Josiah Begg.
The RCMP is the best placed investigative agency to complete these investigations and provide a credible report.
So the role of the Thunder Bay Police Service is supposed to be to investigate this and actually get to the bottom of why this is happening. It isn't because they caused the deaths, it's because they're unable to do those investigations that today is happening. Because they're incompetent to do those investigations today is happening.
Deputy Police Chief Sylvie Hoth assumed command in June, and she insisted that the police force was not in crisis. That story and more when TBT News Year-in-Review continues. Welcome back. Thunder Bay Police held a news conference in early June to address all the controversies facing the police force.
Though what we see is business as usual.
In the face of mounting criticism from First Nation leaders and community members, 2 separate police oversight investigations, and the recent charges and suspension of Police Chief J.P. Levesque, Acting Chief Sylvie Hoth maintains their situation is not a crisis.
If the community sees this as a crisis, that's their perception. I'm not negating the fact that there are challenging times, not at all. I mean, we know we have a lot of things on our plate right now, but as I stated, it's still business as usual.
Later in June, Ontario's chief coroner announced he's called in an outside police service to help investigate the deaths of 2 teenagers in Thunder Bay.
This is not a review, this is not a reinvestigation.
Ontario Chief Coroner Dr. Dirk Heyer has enlisted the help of the York Regional Police in the deaths of 17-year-old Tammy Kiash and 14-year-old Josiah Begg, both of whom were found in local waterways last month. Heyer declined to say which police force will take the lead, saying it's about collaboration to fully understand what happened to these 2 young people. He also insists the decision isn't an indictment of the job done by the Thunder Bay Police Service.
This is ensuring that we get the best answers to the questions that are around the deaths of these 2 youth, and I've recognized that I believe an outside perspective will assist with giving us a full understanding of the circumstances of these deaths.
After months of effort and negotiations, an icon of Thunder Bay's marine history came back home to stay. The Alexander Henry icebreaker was towed here from Kingston to become a tourist attraction.
Just 15 days after City Council voted to contribute $125,000 to tow the Alexander Henry from Kingston back to its home in Thunder Bay, the decommissioned Canadian Coast Guard icebreaker has arrived. The project to bring back the piece of marine engineering history was spearheaded by the Lakehead Transportation Museum Society. Since last fall, the volunteer organization has been working to bring the Henry home.
This event that took place today with the Henry coming home to Thunder Bay was an absolute piece of history. The fact that the ship is now here is an absolute amazing moment for the city of Thunder Bay, and it is a piece of history that will never be repeated.
A 25-year-old man was severely beaten on a walking path in the county park area on June 25th. Marlon Chukwumolin died in hospital 2 days later, but city police refused to call it a homicide. His father, Ron, went to the media several times in the following weeks to express his frustration about the lack of information or an arrest in the case.
Chukwumolin's death marked the start of a deadly summer in Thunder Bay as city police investigated 5 murders, beginning with a double homicide on Carl Avenue on July 2nd.
The bodies of 22-year-old Corey Campbell of Thunder Bay and Cat Lake First Nation and 50-year-old Robert Lloyd Gray, originally from Mishkigogaming First Nation, were discovered inside this residence at 248 Carl Avenue Sunday afternoon. The deaths were quickly ruled as homicides later that same day.
Bear in mind that the coroner is on scene at any of these instances. A full autopsy obviously needs to occur, but it's based on the evidence that's in front of the investigators at that time.
Monday, police issued a release stating 41-year-old Garnet Loon and 19-year-old Kaylee Loon had been arrested Sunday night by OPP in Sioux Lookout.
On July 5th, police were called to the McVicker Creek to investigate another homicide.
The body of Thunder Bay native 31-year-old Kevin Roundhead was found near McVicker Creek, just off of North Cumberland Street and Marina Park Drive, shortly after 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Witnesses described a man found unresponsive under the bridge with a swollen and bloodied face. The case was upgraded to a homicide investigation after the victim was pronounced dead, and police quickly made an arrest.
Well, not much of an update other than what was released earlier today. We had an assault that turned to a homicide in the area of McVicker Creek at Cumberland Street, and we have one male in custody for that right now.
In mid-July, the province took another step towards bringing cardiac surgery to Thunder Bay.
Today it was confirmed the money is secured and there's no turning back.
Today is about the money. It's there, it's firm. The hospital can now go forward and complete the work that they have to do to RFP the project and at some point begin the construction.
No specific numbers were given on how much it would cost, but once fully operational, the multi-million-dollar project would provide vascular care to approximately 600 patients and cardiac surgical services to about 400 patients in the region each year.
Another bombshell hit the city in July as the OPP charged Mayor Keith Hobbs, his wife, and another woman, Mary Voss, with extortion. The three are accused of trying to induce local lawyer Sandy Zaitsev to purchase a house for Voss, using threats to disclose criminal allegations to the police about him.
Just hours after the OPP announced that Mayor Keith Hobbs will face criminal charges of corruption and obstructing justice, senior city staff and councillors gathered here at City Hall to announce that Hobbs will not be returning to the mayor's seat anytime soon.
The City of Thunder Bay will not be making a public comment as this matter is before the courts, other than to assure the public that the charges are unrelated to municipal business or issues. The mayor has advised he will be absent from his public duties in accordance with city policy as he deals with this personal matter.
In late July, Thunder Bay hosted the biggest fireworks show in Canada. 15,000 people came to the carnival on the Cam, and thousands more were turned away at the gates.
The Fort staff told us earlier in the day that they were probably going to hit capacity, and that's exactly what they did. At around 8 o'clock, cars in line were turned away. The park hit its capacity 3 hours before the show had even begun. And those who made it in were extremely pleased they decided to come early.
They were unreal. They were really spectacular. And what a great storyline and everything they had to it. Fantastic.
I was like completely moved to tears. It was so amazing. I cried. I just felt so blessed to be here and to see this amazing show and what it meant for Canada 150 and all of the history that it talked about. It was overwhelming and so emotional and so amazing.
And on July 31st, Michael Gravel made his first public appearance since taking a leave of absence.
Just over 5 months ago, I did announce that I was stepping aside as Minister of Northern Development and Mines to deal with depression. This time has given me the opportunity to work more closely with my health team to better understand the struggle I've been experiencing and how best to heal and recover.
And stay with us. We'll have more when TBT News Year-in-Review continues right after this short break. Welcome back. While the police chief and the mayor were facing criminal charges, the city was hit with a different kind of bombshell in August. An old explosive device inside the High Street retaining wall was accidentally detonated.
It sounded like something smashed into their home. At least that's how one resident described the sound of the explosion that reverberated through the neighborhood Tuesday afternoon. According to city project engineer Mike Vogrig, an undiscovered explosive device was accidentally struck by the contractor.
An old explosive device was detonated during demolition or during rock removal. Currently the work has been temporarily suspended.
On August 6th, the city police responded to the discovery of a body at the mouth of the McVicker Creek. The victim was just 18 years old, and police later arrested a 22-year-old man for second-degree murder.
The results of the post-mortem examination has confirmed that Braden Munoz was murdered. Munoz's body was discovered in the bush area near McVicker's Creek on Sunday morning. The death was originally ruled suspicious, and a coroner's examination in Toronto confirmed the death was a homicide, but police have not released the cause of death.
Yeah, that's pretty standard in homicide investigations, not to get into any detail. It allows investigators then to be able to hold back evidence, which allows them to be able to filter any information they get in.
On August 21st, Premier Kathleen Wynne made a long-awaited announcement regarding an access road to the Ring of Fire.
And now, after years of talk, Ontario is planning an east-west road from Pickle Lake, which will also be connected to a pair of remote communities, Webequie and Nabinimik. Wynne says this announcement would not have been possible without the help from route studies by the First Two Nations.
As a result of the report, there isn't yet a full consensus among all of the First Nation leadership on exactly what the route forward should be. But what I said and what our government said to the First Nations was where there were willing communities who did see an opportunity and did have agreement in their communities about how to move forward in partnership with government, in partnership with industry, that we would move on those roads.
And just a day later, another big announcement for the Mattawa First Nations. The city made plans to give a former seniors home to Mattawa for a high school and student residence.
Grandview Lodge has been sitting vacant on Lily Street since January of 2016. The city had been trying to sell it without much success. But now, the 60-year-old building could have a new lease on life. The idea is to repurpose it to house high school students from the 9 Mattawa First Nations coming to the city. Mattawa CEO David Paul Achni-Pishkam says with the Student Education and Care Center, the teenagers can be looked after while they attend high school and won't be on their own.
So that facility, we believe, will provide an environment that where it's going to be it's going to be a home for them, a family setting, and that's our vision, and that's our goal.
September was a month to remember for local baseball fans as the U18 World Baseball Cup came to Thunder Bay with 12 junior all-star teams from around the world.
Well over 4,000 fans packed Port Arthur Stadium to watch the United States win a 4th consecutive World Cup on Sunday evening.
Really happy just to see these stands filled. Even without Team Canada involved, is really overwhelming for our board of directors. We're just thrilled to see the center field bleachers filled, 600 seats there, and most every seat in the house is filled, and people peeking through the fence to try to get a view of this fantastic action.
Also in September, a $2.5 million fundraising campaign was launched for the proposed art gallery on the waterfront, led by a team of volunteers.
Though $2.5 million may seem like a lofty goal, gallery director Sharon Godwin is confident they'll reach their target.
We've done all the economic impact studies, but I think the real impact is that Thunder Bay has such a wonderful cultural community. The community itself is very appreciative of the arts in general, and I think this would be another cornerstone.
The project will also require $20 to $25 million in federal and provincial support. Those applications have already been sent in, and Crow says they expect the government's decision by the end of the year.
In mid-September, 35-year-old Nazareth Nelson was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, aggravated assault, and attempted murder for a series of violent incidents at a residence on North Syndicate Avenue. A 25-year-old man was found dead, and 2 other people had been seriously assaulted.
Well, it appears that this individual is responsible for the homicide as well as the 2 assaults. Now, the charges then relate to that: second-degree murder, obviously, for the homicide, then aggravated assault for 1, and attempted murder on another.
Meanwhile, a 2015 homicide case came to an end. 21-year-old Cruz Pelche from Fort William First Nation was sentenced to 8 years in prison for the beating death of his girlfriend, Larissa Charlie Stillaway. But because of the time already served, he'll serve just 3 more years behind bars. And in late September, the Office of the Independent Police Review Director came to the city to collect community feedback on the Thunder Bay Police Service. More than 200 people packed into the Da Vinci Center to tell their stories, many of them about how police conduct investigations involving Indigenous people.
I can tell you that I have heard a lot of concerns from members in the communities, the different communities, about issues and how they believe police are interacting with the Indigenous community. I can tell you that what I've heard is that people talk about there's racism, and hopefully we'll be able to make some recommendations to address those issues.
Coming up next, the Energy East pipeline is canceled and Sears announces it's going out of business. Those stories and more when TBT News Year-in-Review continues. Welcome back to TBT News Year-in-Review. In early October, local environmental groups celebrated the demise of the Energy East pipeline. That's after TransCanada officials canceled the controversial project.
The proposed Energy East pipeline project would have seen over 1 million barrels of oil being carried across the country every day. The project would have converted an existing natural gas pipeline running through northwestern Ontario to carry crude oil. Citizens United for a Sustainable Planet representative Paul Berger says the investment towards Energy East did not make sense economically or environmentally.
That would be like opening all of Ontario's coal-fired generating plants again. That would be the greenhouse gas impact, like putting 7 million cars on the road.
Meanwhile, Sears announced a plan in October to liquidate all of its remaining stores in Canada. Officials from Intercity Shopping Centre say although it's sad to lose an anchor tenant that's been in that location for over 60 years, the closure could be seen as an opportunity for other retailers to move in.
What it does now is we are in a position where we need to determine what is best for Intercity, what's best for the community. It's an opportunity really for us to determine if it's best to fill this with one retailer or a number of retailers, which may mean a redevelopment actually.
Also in October, tempers flared at City Hall as Council debated a motion to condemn the comments about Indigenous people by Dryden Senator Lynn Bayak. The final motion was amended several times and ended up being passed without any of its original wording or intent.
I don't normally criticize this council for any decisions it makes or any part of the process, but I am really, really embarrassed.
That brought swift condemnation from Mayor Hobbs, who saw Angus's remarks as an attack.
Councillor Angus, I take exception to the fact that you're embarrassed about the way our council votes. I take exception to that. Huge exception to that. We all voted and we gave our reasons.
Worship on a point of personal
privilege.
privilege.
You're out of order. I'm speaking right now. I gave my reasons in the local paper. She's already been disciplined. It's not our job to discipline somebody else. That was a reason I voted down the motion. For you to question why I voted that down, unbelievable.
On October 16th, the longest faculty strike in the history of Ontario's colleges began. It meant the cancellation of classes for 3,500 students at Confederation College.
With no new deal in place, Confederation College faculty and staff were out of the classroom and on the picket lines. Local union president Rebecca Ward says the strike isn't a demand for more money. Ward says they're looking for change in order to create the best learning environment possible for students.
We're in this together. I mean, we are fighting for the quality of education. We are fighting for students, but we're also fighting for the precarious workforce that is really the most vulnerable in this situation.
In early November, the two sides in the college strike went back to the bargaining table, and everyone involved was optimistic about a potential deal.
Despite any trepidations they may have about the offer to come, the idea of returning to the classroom is one that excited both sides in the strike.
You can feel that the spirits in the building are higher, like, well, okay, maybe this will happen. We can get back at what we do best, which is supporting students.
It's exciting. We want to be in the classroom. We want to be with our students. We want our students in the classroom. We know they're in a very vulnerable spot.
But it was not to be. The talks broke down and the province eventually announced a forced vote on the college's final offer by the striking faculty. That vote was soundly rejected by 86% of the union members. So the province introduced back to work legislation to end the strike. Classes finally resumed on November 21st.
Back to work, back to class. Confederation College faculty returned to campus Monday, followed by their students on Tuesday. It marks an end to the longest college strike in the province's history. President Jim Matter says the 5-week ordeal has taken a toll on all involved.
I'll be incredibly happy to see our faculty, but even happier to see our students back on Tuesday, and again, doing what we do best, which is supporting in their learning. It's hard on everyone, absolutely everyone, and there's frustrations with everyone, but I know everyone will get focused back on learning, and it'll be better.
Also in November, the Crown's office finally made a decision on whether to upgrade the charges in the infamous trailer hitch incident.
Braden Bushby walks out of Thunder Bay Courthouse Friday afternoon after being released on bail. Bushby was initially facing a charge of aggravated assault, but that charge has been upgraded to second-degree murder after Crown prosecutors met with the regional coroner and Kentner's family.
I'm feeling pretty good, but we just got to see what goes on. I hope it all sticks and goes good, because my sister doesn't deserve it.
34-year-old Barbara Kentner was walking with her sister Melissa on the night of January 28th when a trailer hitch thrown from a moving vehicle struck Kentner in the midsection. She was taken to hospital but died from her internal injuries on July 4th. Since then, there's been growing demand for more serious charges to be laid, including an online petition with over 40,000 signatures.
The month of November saw plenty of controversy for indoor soccer groups in Thunder Bay. The opening of the new soccer field at the college bubble was delayed several times due to mold testing. And a plan to convert an old sawmill building on the waterfront was halted by an OMB appeal and then scrapped altogether.
It's unfortunate. I've never spoken to the people, so I don't know what their idea is behind it, so I can't say anything to that. It's just sad that there's a situation where there's going to be 1,500 people without a place to play.
The building on Maureen Street would have been retrofitted with artificial turf and other improvements. The rolls of turf are already in the building, waiting to be installed. When it was complete, the facility would have been used by men's teams, women's teams, and kids' soccer teams this winter. Veneziale admits they're scrambling now to find other temporary locations.
Trying to figure that out as we go. Right now, city administration, city council is looking into options for us. They've been great helping us out in the soccer community, and then we're literally looking at everything possible.
December marked the start of local hearings by the National Inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The hearings were often emotional, both for the families and for the commissioners.
The system failed, and it's still failing today. Am I going to lose my job because I say that? Maybe. But I'll sleep well.
Testimony at the second day of Thunder Bay hearings for the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women was almost too much for Commissioner Michelle Audette. Audette was hearing testimony from the family of Sarah Skunk, a Mishkegoguming woman missing since 1995 when she was last seen in Thunder Bay. Skunk's sisters say they felt frustrated by the long wait for information. What's more, when a grandniece went missing years later, they were upset by the police response.
I asked the police for help, and I gave them some information. I told them, they asked me what her background was. I told them she was Native. A whole different attitude after that.
Also in December, the trial began for J.P. Levesque. The suspended police chief is charged with 1 count of obstructing justice and 1 count of breach of trust.
As testimony concluded on day 6 of the trial of J.P. Levesque, the question sitting before the court is this: did the suspended police chief use his discretion to disclose investigative information to Mayor Keith Hobbs with the intention of obstructing the investigative process?
The final witness to take the stand was former Thunder Bay Police Chief Bob Herman. He testified that chiefs operate with a much higher level of discretion than rank-and-file officers, and when it came to policing policies, a chief has the right to deviate or change them under certain circumstances. In his time as chief, Herman said he regularly shared investigative information with 3 city managers as he saw necessary. He added that he believed Levesque made the best decision he could have under the circumstances in regards to disclosing the information to Hobbs. Herman said of police discretion generally, quote, optically it may not look the best, but that's business. In closing submissions, the defense articulated that it's only required to prove a reasonable doubt that Levesque acted with criminal intent. The Crown submitted that Levesque believed he was above the law and did intend to obstruct the administration of justice when he disclosed the investigation to Mayor Hobbs. Carlisle Fazette, TBT News.
The verdict is expected to be delivered January 25th. And Mayor Keith Hobbs marked the end of a tumultuous year with his final State of the City address at City Hall. The mayor spoke about council's accomplishments during his 2 terms in office, and he also addressed what he calls the elephant in the room, the criminal charges for extortion and obstruction of justice, which he and his wife are currently facing.
I'd like to recognize my beautiful wife, Marissa, here with us tonight, who through her endless love, advice, and support has made me able to do what I do. Also for your courage in helping a stranger and her young daughter out of a horrible situation. This compassion is something that I believe is needed more in our society. We are paying a huge price for that kind deed, but we are stronger for it. We have no doubt that the court of law, not the court of public opinion, will clear our name and that the truth will one day wash to shore.
And what other events and controversies will the new year bring to Thunder Bay? You'll have to tune in to find out. Thank you for joining us for this recap of 2017's top stories. I'm Leanne Evans, wishing you all the best in 2018.